Hello everybody, welcome to this webinar on apprenticeships and how it can be applied to tax training. My name is Siddle, I'm Head of Tolley Exam Training.
And my name is Cavell and I'm Head of Apprenticeships.
In this webinar we'll take you through how the Apprenticeship Levy works, how it can be applied to training, and in particular in relation to the ATT and CTA qualifications.
So apprenticeships have been in the press a lot lately. From a learner's perspective, it's about earn while you learn. So you get a structured training programme and you get the opportunity to have a salary at the same time. Now from an employer's point of view, that's a very positive talent attraction tool, offering a robust training programme to get a full, well-rounded professional at the end of the day. Plus, of course, you get the opportunity to use the levy, or if you're not levy paying, there's still advantages to have because you can pay only 10% of those training costs. Now let's look in the levy a little bit more detail. Now if you are a large employer, and we're talking having a pay bill of over £3 million, you'll be paying the levy. By pay bill, we're looking at your Class 1 NIC earnings. Now the levy is 0.5% on the pay bill over that £3 million. Now the way it's paid over with the PAYE, so it goes into a digital account at the same time you make your PAYE payments. Now for every £1 you put into that digital account, the government tops it up with another 10p, and it's the funding in that digital account that you can use for apprenticeship training, and only apprenticeship training. And the way it comes out of the account, it's spread over the duration of that apprenticeship. So if you have apprenticeship for a year, for example, and that's the minimum amount of time you can have an apprenticeship for, you'd actually have 80% of the costs for that apprentice come out every single month. And when that apprentice comes to the end of their training, the final 20% will come out. And those funds will come direct from that digital account to your approved training provider. Now for the ATT, the funding band that the government will fund up to, and hence can take money out of your digital account, is up to £9,000. And for the level 7, which is where the CTA exams come in, the funding band is yet to be confirmed. Now that's all about the apprenticeship levy, but as I said, there is assistance there if you're not paying the levy. Now if you're not paying the levy at all, or maybe you've used up everything in your digital account, there is co-investment for you. So co-investment means the employer puts in 10% towards the cost of those training, and the government will fund the extra 90%. So with a £9,000 funding band on ATT, as the employer, you pay £900 to get an ATT qualified person. And remember, under the apprenticeship, it's not just about the professional exams, it's about creating that well-rounded professional, so they're set for their future career and to work with you in your business. Now, what does that funding cover? Now, the funding covers course fees. So you're looking at the training when they come to us to do those ATT exams, and the training they need for the skills and behaviours which are also involved in the apprenticeship. That training can be done in the classroom, so coming out of the office and into the classroom with us, but it can also be done online. So that's e-learning done either at their home, or more traditionally it's done at their desk in the office time. Now, also it involves progress reviews, which are 3 monthly checks that the apprenticeship requires to check that they are on target and that their studying stays on track. Also, the funding covers the endpoint assessment fees. Now, the endpoint assessment, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail later, but the endpoint assessment is there to check that they have reached the standard required to qualify for their apprenticeship. And as well, administration costs. Now, the apprenticeships, they are actually governed by Ofsted when we're looking at level 4 for ATT, and hence there are compliance requirements and quality assurance checks to make sure that apprenticeship really is robust and up to standard. Now, the funding doesn't cover non-training costs. It doesn't cover the wages and the employment costs of the employee. It's specifically there for training. It also doesn't cover the student and the exam registration fees for ATT or CTA. It also doesn't cover resit costs if they need to sit another exam, and that's if there's no new learning required for that particular resit. And also it doesn't cover costs incurred by management as they're supporting the apprentice through their learning journey. Now, not everybody is eligible for an apprenticeship. It may not be right for you, it may not be right for the apprentice. We need to have an eligible employer and an eligible apprentice. Now, to be an eligible employer, you've got to be offering a genuine job. You are willingly there to support that apprentice all the way through their professional qualifications, but through the entire apprenticeship journey. Now, apprenticeships are all about knowledge, skills and behaviours to do their job. It's looking at that full, well-rounded professional at the end of the day. So you've got to be able to give them a job which will enable them to practice those skills. Now, to enhance that further, specifically, an apprentice must be allowed to do 20% of their working time in off-the-job training. Now, that must be within their working hours. So that includes classroom courses with us, but also includes any online or e-learning done even at their desk. They don't have to leave the office. Now, learning is defined here as something which is not part of their day-to-day activities. Now, it could also be shadowing and mentoring. It could be some in-house courses that you put them on. We can't ask the apprentice in any way to contribute financially to this cost of learning. And also, as an eligible employer, we will have to do some health and safety checks as well. Now, as for an eligible apprentice, things have changed with the Apprenticeship Levy. It's not all about school leavers and young people. Of course, they can be apprentices, but it could be anybody of any age. So it's about new jobs and it's about upskilling existing jobs. If there's new skills, then it's apprenticeships. If there's no new skills involved, then we can't take advantage of the apprenticeship funding. The eligible apprentice must also have a right to work in the UK and be an EEA citizen, and they must be offered full-time employment, and their employment contract must at least cover the duration of the apprenticeship, which is a minimum of 12 months. As well, they have some initial assessments to check that they are up to the right standard to do this apprenticeship, and especially we need to check English and maths. Now on to the training. So what does it look like for your apprentice? What does their learner journey look like? Well, yes, it's going to have the professional qualifications in there, but there's a lot more to it. So each apprentice will come in and have an induction phase so they understand this learner journey, what's expected of them, what's expected of your training provider, and what they can expect of their employer. Because it's very much all of us working together to support that apprentice through their journey. So they have an individual learning plan, which we're going to constantly monitor and we check to make sure that they are on programme. But at least at that outset, they'll have a plan of how they're going to obtain all of the competencies that they need to get through to be an apprentice. Now, each apprenticeship is split into 3 competencies. We've got skills, behaviours, and we have knowledge. Now, in tax, we very much respect the professional exams, and hence the knowledge can be completely covered with those professional exams. So yes, it's looking at technical knowledge, but it's also looking at things like business awareness. Can they analyse some business transactions on sales, on purchases, for example? Skills and behaviours, it's very much looking at what your apprentices need to work in the tax profession. The tax apprenticeships has been designed by trailblazer groups. Now, these are groups of employers working with members of professional bodies, and they are looking very much about what an apprentice really needs in this particular profession. So they've been designed by employers for employers. So the skills and behaviours are exactly what you would want from your apprentices. It's management, it's managing their own time, it's being able to organise, it's being able to analyse data, it's also being able to develop professional scepticism. So having an inquiring mind, checking, is everything okay? Do I need to ask for more information? It's also looking at management, leadership into the future. They're all skills that we would love a professional to have. The skills and behaviours and the knowledge and professional exams, they are going to be monitored with a training log. So your apprentice is going to keep a training log throughout their journey so they can see how they are using these skills, behaviours and knowledge elements. Also, there'll be some work-based assignments so they can check and we can check that they are being able to put everything into practice and to communicate, which is another skill that they need, communicate how they're getting along. Now that's called your on-programme assessment phase, and it will be checked with these 3 monthly progress reviews where your training provider will sit with that apprentice and check how they're doing. Now they're working towards competence in these, and when we think they are provisionally competent in knowledge, skills and behaviours, they go through the gateway. Now the gateway is for the training provider and the employer to say yes, they're ready to go through the next phase. They are ready for endpoint assessment. Now, endpoint assessment is a series of tests designed for them to showcase and show off that they know all these competencies. There's 3 elements. So ATT level 4, we have role simulation, portfolio and reflective statement. Now, each apprenticeship has its own endpoint assessment, so what we're discussing here is the level 4 learner journey. Now, the role simulation, that is an exam that's set by the ATT. It's like a mini case study. It's a real life scenario where they get some pre-seen information, a bit like a permanent file. So maybe a bit of company background, maybe the shareholdings, for example, maybe a little bit about the family history if we're looking at more individuals. But it's giving them some information that they can digest, they can think about, and then when they come in to sit the exam, they might get a little bit of a curve, a little bit of something different, so they can show how they can adapt to a situation, which is another of those skills and behaviours that they need to demonstrate. So they will be communicating, and it's very much about communication and bringing in technical knowledge, plus of course understanding of ethical concerns, legal concerns. So it's pulling all of their knowledge together and showcasing it in this mini case study. The portfolio and reflective statement. Now they will be assessed by independent assessors, and the portfolio is literally the best bits of that training log to demonstrate that they have those skills, behaviours and knowledge, and they've learnt all those and put them into practice in your environment. And the reflective statement, it's just what it says. It's there for them to reflect on their journey. What went well, what maybe they'd do differently, how they've put these skills and behaviours into practice. Now those 3 elements, when they've passed those 3, they've gone through endpoint assessment and they are competent. They will get their certificate and they are a fully fledged apprentice. Now for ATT level 4, we're expecting that to be 12 to 24 months. A lot of people will do that over 18 to 24 months. But it's to be discussed with the employer and the training provider as to how that learning journey needs to look and the time you need to take over it. Now, over to Chris to talk about how we get the ATT and CTA into those programmes of study.
Thank you very much, Vix. As Vix mentioned, the ATT is covered by the level 4 apprentice and CTA level 7. The ATT, we expect programmes to take between about 18 to 24 months. And of course, the flexibility within the ATT qualification allows for various combinations of papers to be sat at different times. The ATT qualification itself requires students to do 3 written exams and 2 computer-based exams. Those can then be put in a various combination to give rise to the apprenticeship journey. There are a variety of different combinations, as I explained. Some of the most common ones will look something like this. If a student was just to be doing the ATT level 4, then doing the 3 tax qualification exams and 2 computer-based exams, a programme could look something like this on the screen. An apprentice starting this November, for example, a school leaver or indeed a graduate, could take ATT exams for the first time in May 18, for example, just one of them, and then follow that up with a second exam or indeed the second plus their option exams in the following November. Those results would come out in the January time, leaving some time for them to do their computer-based exams, and then follow that up with the endpoint assessment. Now, the ATT have identified at the moment that they will do the endpoint assessment at 3 times in the year, in March, in June and in December. And of course they need, as Vix explained with that endpoint assessment, some time to assimilate with the pre-seen material and also prepare everything else that they do to get through the gateway. So of course one opportunity, probably the earliest opportunity, will be them to do that endpoint assessment then in June 19. And as you can see, that programme has taken approximately 19 months from the time that they started through to completing that endpoint assessment. It is possible, of course, to combine the ATT level 4 with the CTA level 7. And therefore a potential programme to combine both of those would look something like this. As part of the journey, it is possible to, of course, provide some earlier training before students embark on the ATT qualification itself, particularly, for example, they are school leavers. In conjunction with the ATT, Tolley's have produced a new set of foundation diplomas, which of course could be an early test of their ability to in fact progress onto the full ATT and indeed CTA qualification. This programme includes that as a possibility. So again, with a September or late autumn start in 17, they could then complete the ATT foundation diplomas in May 18, followed then of course by the 3 ATT papers, perhaps 2 in November 18, 1 in May 19. Again, a different mix is possible to be discussed with employers and students alike. Again, followed by the 2 CBE assessments, and then pick up the endpoint assessment in December 19. Again, you can see a journey, something in the range of 23, 24 months or so. Then they could pick up, of course, and convert onto the level 7 for CTA. Now, there are changes that have just been announced in relation to the CTA qualification, and ATT students would now get exemption from awareness. This programme has taken that into consideration on the basis that CTA is not embarked on until 2019. It would result in the students then just having to do 3 CTA papers, 2 advisory ones and 1 at application. Again, those could be spread. We've suggested, for example, 1 in November 2020 and the other 2 in May 2021. And again, to be finally determined, but there is endpoint assessments necessary to complete the level 7 CTA apprentice as well. Part of that endpoint assessment will include the so-called application case study, but again, there are going to be similar reflective statements and also a project element to conclude the apprenticeship. Again, that journey will probably take something in the region of 3.5 to potentially 4 years. What the ATT and CTA have also introduced fairly recently is the so-called tax pathway. Again, this offers some flexibility to students and also reduces the number of papers that have to be sat. So again, a similar programme of this nature with intake again this time this year in the autumn. Again, a similar sort of starting off with 2 ATT papers, perhaps in May 18, followed by the second core, as it's referred to, for the tax pathway. That again could be another ATT paper or perhaps the alternative of CTA awareness. Again, together with the 2 CBEs to complete the ATT qualification. Again, after that, through the gateway, the endpoint assessment, again, potentially maybe March 19, but probably more likely June 19. Again, that would then flow on to CTA through, of course, the level 7 in a very similar vein to the way that I just explained it before. That again would require the students to embark on a level 4 and then a level 7. Of course, in order to complete the level 4, the endpoint assessment for level 4 would have to be done. It would, however, be possible for a student who is going to embark on the CTA qualification at the end of the day to be signed up straight away onto a level 7. Again, this could be done through the tax pathway, so of course the ATT element is taken first and the CTA element second, but with that overall objective always to get to CTA, they could of course do it as a single level 7. Now again, as Vic's explained, we're still awaiting the amount of the capping for that funding, but on the basis that that would be adequate to support this sort of training, again, a student could follow this straight through. The advantage of this would be, of course, that there would be no endpoint assessment to have to do at level 4. The student would pass straight through because there's no gateway at that point until they got to level 7. Again, that may well allow the qualification and the apprentice to be completed in a slightly shorter period of time, but of course that again is something to be determined between employer, training provider and the student at the time that they embark on their journey. As I said, that's some of the possibilities. There are others that the ATT and CTA qualification allow, but certainly they're some of the most, one would expect to be the most familiar, common and most pragmatic journeys to be established. I hope you found this webinar interesting. If you would like any more details about the apprenticeships and how it would apply to tax training, our contact details are on the screen. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you.